Oh, I hope the wind isn't gonna be bugging the audio. I have my little dead cat on. That car is so loud. Hello everyone, it's Aika. If you've never seen any of my videos before, hi, nice to meet you. And if you have, welcome back. I hope the audio is all clear right now. I know there's gonna be some background noise, but it was just such a nice day out today and it feels so summery and warm that I wanted to film outside. But welcome to my spring reading wrap up. Didn't read as much as I wanted to, so it didn't really warrant a month by month reading wrap up video. So I thought I would just gather them all together, make a spring reading wrap up before I start my summer reading. One of these books actually rolled over into June and I'm in the middle of reading one of the books I'm going to be mentioning very briefly today. One of the books I didn't even finish, and I'm debating between DNFing it or just pushing through and continuing it because I think I only have like 50 pages left. So honestly, I may as well just suck it up, put my big girl pants on, and actually read it. Yeah, let's talk about all of these books. I haven't sat down and made a video in a hot minute. Last time I did it was a video that I'm actually going to be posting soon, but it was with my friend Karita when I was in London with her, and it was so much fun. We had so much fun making it. It was a bookish would you rather. There are 6 books here and I listened to 2 audiobooks. I'll need to check my phone because I keep a little note of the books that I'm reading. Let's start off with these 2, which I mentioned in my last video because I think when I made my January-February reading wrap up, I was in the middle of reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. But I don't think I could even explain how much I love this book, and I thought I wouldn't, which is really sad. But I pretty much started listening to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett on Spotify, and then I loved it so much I stopped listening to it. I was like, nope, I need to fully absorb this book and I need to physically read it, and I want to highlight and annotate it because I love Emily and Wendell so much. I love the story, I love the setting, I love everything about this book. I love the writing. It's just so like, it's so magical and beautiful and like a different way than Once Upon a Broken Heart or Horrible is. Like, I describe those books as being very magical as well, but this is magical in a different way. I don't know how to explain it, but this first book follows Emily Wilde, who is a professor at Cambridge University, and I think this book is set in the 1800s. I know the date is on here, not 1800s, it's set in the early 1900s, like 1909 or something like that. But these 2 books are told as journal entries, not in a confusing way, but I really like how they separated the chapters into different dates of the journal entries. Again, Emily Wilde is a professor at Cambridge University. She is a professor of dryadology. In this world, dryadology is like an actual scientific subject, just like zoology or marine biology, and dryadology studies fairies. So she is a professor and a researcher for the fae. So she finds out about this one type of fae that no one's really been able to research. So she decides to go to this little town to research it, and it turns out the fae has been killing people in that town. So it's like a lot of mystery with that. She's just trying to figure out what they are. And while she's there, like this professor who really annoys her, it's a little academic rivals to lovers action, he ends up showing up and he's like, oh, I'm actually gonna help you with your research. And she's like, no you're not, get out of here. But he's like, nope, I'm staying, and you know what, you're gonna want me to stay because I'm a really well-renowned professor and I could get you to talk at a conference if you let me help you and if you help me with this one paper I'm doing. But she doesn't like him because he's cocky and arrogant and she thinks he's lazy. But it's so cute, and there's like little footnotes like under her journal entries. The love interest's name is Wendell Bambleby, and I love Bambleby so much. He's so sweet and he's so down bad for her. It's really slow burn romance on her part, but he's like head over heels for her like that. He has like this really weird thing where he is very high maintenance. He likes things very clean. He likes his clothes to look a certain way, but he's so charming. he's perfect. I love him. And the banter is so good because she's just so annoyed at him, but he's just this charmer. Also, this is called Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies because her research is based on her wanting to make an encyclopedia. And in the next book she wants to publish is a map of all the fairy realms. And keep in mind, both these books are definitely fantasy books with a romance subplot, but I still think the romance is really cute, and just as a story on its own, it's so good. You get more Fae in the second book. You could see more of their relationship. I think the first half was a little bit slower than the second half, but he literally worships the ground she walks on. He holds her in such a high regard, and he has so much faith in her. He just adores her. He looks up to her. And in this book, she finally starts admitting to her feelings. Like, both these books are so cozy and so sweet, and they're perfect. I don't care what anyone says. These books are perfect, and I absolutely love them with all my heart. Like, there's this one scene in the first book where he wrote in her journal for her because she loves journaling. She details everything because it helps her with her research, and it's really important to her, but she was incapacitated. So he was like, I'm gonna catch up the events of what happened today to you in your journal. And he was talking about how she was explaining things to him this one time, and he was like, I only half listened in astonishment. I say half because I was mostly just watching you, observing the way your mind clicks in words like some fantastical clock. Next book I read, this is the one I'm debating on DNFing actually. It's Lore of the Wilds by Annalise Brana, and I have mixed feelings about this. It is a cozy fantasy, it is sweet, and it is cute. There is a love triangle. One of them is kind of enemies to lovers. And the premise of it is so good, but for some reason I'm just struggling through this book. I haven't picked it up since the last time I read it, and I literally only have about 30 pages left of it. Like, the setting, the premise is really good. It's just how it's done after that. I think one of the romances is not slow burn enough. I don't get to see enough of it like develop. It feels a little bit insta-love. The other one is better. That one's the one that's more enemies to lovers, but not really. They don't want to like kill each other or anything. He just doesn't like her because she's human and they're fae. I could see why people would like this book. It's just not doing it for me. It is a romantasy book. In this world, humans are treated as subpar beings because it's a world of fae, and so the humans, they all have to live in this one area in the woods that's guarded, and they can't leave. So the main character, her name is Lore. One day a bunch of fae comes into the village, and one of them is like, hey Lore, come with us, we need you to work in the library, because they found out that she could read, and she could read one of the like more ancient languages that the fae can't read. And there's an enchanted library in the palace that is cursed so that fae could not go into it. But since she's human, she could just waltz right in. So she starts working there, and then there's this guard who is her guard. That's the first love interest. And then when things go awry at the library, that's when the plot kind of keeps going. But the most important thing that she wants is that she wants to have her own magic. She wants to have her own powers because of how helpless and powerless she feels as a human in this world. So when she is at that library, she kind of uncovers more things about history, more things about magic, and all she wants to do is just keep the humans in the villages safe, and hopefully that one day they'll be able to be free again. Maybe I should give it like another reread. Maybe if there's an audiobook, I'll re-listen to it. I kind of forgot a good amount of it, but it's just alrighty. Next book I read, actually I listened to it half and half, was Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and so many people love this book, but I could not. I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. That's the only other Ali Hazelwood book I've read, and I loved it. I thought it was so cute. I thought it was so fun. So Bride, I want to say it's kind of like an urban fantasy. It is fantasy. The main character, she is a vampire. The love interest is a werewolf, but it's like a modern world. I can't even remember what I rated it. I think it might have been like 3 stars or 3.5 stars. The romance was good. There's some really good like dialogue in there between the two main characters, but it's giving 2016 Wattpad werewolf story. And you know, I used to eat those up. I used to love them, but some of the lines in this book were kind of cringy. I could not take this book seriously after I read or after I heard the word furry in it. But it's like a marriage of convenience or an arranged marriage between like the werewolves and vampires who are enemies. It's a good premise. People really love it. I didn't, because I didn't like how it was written. So the premise of this book is that humans, vampires, and werewolves are all living together in separate territories of this world. So the land is like split in three, one section for werewolves, one section for humans, one section for vampires. But the werewolves and vampires are enemies, and humans and vampires have a treaty. So when a new governor for the humans are elected, the treaty wouldn't be reinstated, so now the vampires are panicking because they're like, oh shoot, now we could be in danger if we don't have the humans backing us up. So they turn to the werewolves, who are their enemies, and they're like, hey, like, we might be in danger, do you want to do a little treaty with us? And in order to do it, they decide that the daughter of the vampire ruler, her name's Misery, will be marrying the alpha of the werewolves. And they're just doing this to kind of keep the werewolves and the humans from ganging up together and against the vampires. Like, it's an arranged marriage. Neither of them really want to do it, but they're gonna do it anyways because they kind of just need to. And the love interest, is it Lo or Lowen? I can't remember, honestly. He's cool. He treats her very well. It's not even like the romance. I think the romance is good, but I think the actual story as a whole is not for me. Part of why Misery agrees to this arranged marriage thing, even though she doesn't really care about the vampires, because she's lived her life among humans her entire life, which was part of the treaty between the humans and vampires, that someone of important stature as a child would be living among the other side. So Misery, the daughter of the ruler, lived with humans, and they're kind of like a collateral, so that if the vampires mess up, Misery would be, and then there's someone important from the human side living in vampire territory, so if they mess up, the vampires could them. But anyways, while she was living with the humans, she ended up becoming best friends with this girl, and one day that girl just disappeared. And the only clue that her friend left was a name, and the name is really familiar because it is the same last name as the alpha of the werewolves. So she's trying to solve that while she's just doing her stuff. But through this book, I found out what the Megaverse is, and I don't know how I feel about it. But Allie Hazelwood definitely loves her STEM girlies, her smart girlies, and I do love that. I just don't like how it fits into like this fantasy setting, and I think that's just a me thing. I think that's just a preference. I don't think I would really like many books that are urban fantasies, because the writing feels like it should be a contemporary romance, but it is fantasy. Because I read so many fantasy books and like romantasy books that when I am reading it, I think I have an expectation of how it is written, how things are said, and this book was different. Okay, and then I listened to my first horror novel, which was Pinata by, let me figure out who the author is. It was Pinata by Leopoldo Gout, and I actually received an arc of this a couple years ago from Valentino Narratives, because I did a campaign with them previously, and they sent me an arc of a bunch of horror novels for October, and I never got around to reading it. But I actually really love horror stories. I always loved it growing up, so I was like, you know what, I may as well just try it out, and I did. I actually enjoyed this book, but it wasn't really that scary to me. I think I gave it 4 stars. I thought that there were a lot of really interesting aspects to this story, but it's about an architect named Carmen who moves to Mexico with her 2 daughters over the summer to work on redesigning and renovating this old church into a hotel. And I think it talks about a lot of really important things. It talks about the femicides that's happening. It talks a lot about how she is constantly undermined in a predominantly male-dominated field, and because she's a girl, they don't really respect her, and she just has a lot of trouble like taking the lead because she's constantly being disrespected. It talks about the Aztec Empire, and it uses Nahuatl culture to build the horror aspect of the story, which I really like because I love folklore, I love legends, and I actually learned a little bit about the Aztec Empire and Nahuatl culture in a couple of my college courses. I learned a bit about it in history, and I learned a bit about it in my Chicano studies class. But it uses the mythology and the legends, and I think that part was really, really cool. So the mom is really skeptical about spiritual stuff, and she's very protective over her two daughters. They're from New York, like they live in New York. I would not read this book if you are scared of bugs. There is a lot of bugs being talked about in this book. It's part of the horror aspect of it. I like the main character, the mom, Carmen. She struggles a lot between protecting her family and her job because she's worked so hard for this, and because she's so skeptical, she doesn't know if her family's actually in danger. She thinks it's all in her head. All starts off when one of the walls in the church she's renovating collapses, and there's a secret room in there, and at this time her daughters were at the construction site with her, and her younger daughter ends up going in there, and her little daughter finds this ancient piñata in this secret room that no one ever knew existed in the church, and it dated back to when the Spaniards were colonizing Mexico. Because she's a little girl, and there are some other reasons for this, but she takes that piñata with her, and then weird things start happening. Weird things were already happening before that, but when that happens, even weirder things start happening. Next book I read is Cold Hearted by Leah Stone and Julie Hall. I got this sent to me from the Nerd Fam, and it's an enemies to lovers, I meant to kill you sort of book. I think that this book probably would have been pretty big in like 2021 Book Talk. It has all the makings of a great fantasy book that people would obsess over, but I think it was just not executed well all the way through. This is such a weird way to explain it, but I feel like it kind of cuts halfway. But every 100 years, a princess of the fairy realm would have to go through this magic portal to go to this land called Ethereum to steal an Ethereum lord's heart. By steal, I mean like quite literally like cut open their chest and take their heart and go back to the fairy realm, and their heart would power the fairy realm for the next 100 years. The princesses that were sent were always the ones from the summer court, and none of them have never came back. And now it is Dawn's turn as the princess of the summer court to go to Ethereum and take a lord's heart. And she has been trained since birth. She's very smart, she's very skilled, and so when she goes there, something goes wrong, and she did not end up appearing right in front of a lord through the portal like you're supposed to. So when she appears in a random village, keep in mind their information about the Ethereum lands are very outdated because the only times they're there is every 100 years, right? And the reason why they're okay also with taking the heart of a lord there is because of a curse that the Ethereums placed, and they think that the Ethereums use dark magic. But so things go wrong, and she's trying to figure out how to get to the castle because obviously that's where the lords will be. And she meets a royal guard, and his name is Xander, and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh well, can you take me to the castle? Actually, I have really important news for your lord. And he's like, you can tell me. And he's like, no, like I need to tell him like immediately, and I need to tell him in person because I can't trust that you would give this information the correct way. There is no information. She's trying to kill his lord. So under the guise that she has information of an assassination attempt to kill the lord, he's like, okay, cool, like I'll take you to him, but I'm gonna arrest you until then. So yeah, it's forced proximity. It's, I won't say that it's enemies to lovers because, well, he doesn't know that she's an enemy and he's just a guard. I think the worst part about this book that I didn't like is that it could have been so good, but it just fell short. I think things came a bit too easy to the characters. There wasn't really much of a struggle there, and you know, there's not enough tension there. And I'm not saying a romance type of tension, I'm just saying tension in like in battles or in the things that are happening in fights, and in like, oh shoot, like what's gonna happen? Is she in danger? Is anyone in danger? Like it came too easy for the characters in this book. Also, it's not slow burn. I think they fall in love in the span of like 2 weeks. Not a big fan of that either. But if you're just looking for kind of a mindless read, maybe to just get you back into reading or like out of a reading slump, I would read this book. It's fun and it's really short. It's only 270 pages. So yes, I understand because of the length of the book, not a lot could be packed into it, but it had so much potential. I think if this was like maybe a 300-page book even, it could add so much to this, so much more detail, so much more plot. Because like there are plot points there, it's just not carried out all the way through. Because in like that it's solved and fixed. It's too easy, and that's my biggest complaint about this book. But it did make me giggle. It was fun. They have good banter. It was just lacking. And like I wish the period of time that they turned to lovers was longer, because who falls in love in 2 weeks? But it is a standalone and an interconnected series. Their story is done, and now the next book is gonna be about other characters. Okay, next book that I listened to is Nothing But Blackened Teeth. I gave this book 2.5 stars. It was just so meh. It's a horror story. I think it's a novella actually, so it's really short, but it's a horror novella about this group of friends who rent out a haunted house in Japan for their friend's like wedding party, and they know it's haunted. They're super into the ghost stories and freaky haunted things, so they thought that they would just have fun there. They would try to do like a seance or something, maybe catch some paranormal activity, but things go wrong. I didn't find this book scary, and the reason why I was so interested in this book was because it said that the ghost stories and like the horror aspect of this would be based on Japanese folklore and mythology, but the thing is, they didn't explain it. So if you are not familiar with it, you just absolutely didn't know what it was. They just throw out like the Japanese names of it, and then you're pretty much left to fend for yourself. So I wasn't familiar with like one of the spirits on here, or like 2 of them, and I couldn't figure it out. I had to search it up on my own because it never like explained it or showed what it was, which was kind of annoying. Maybe it's because I listened to it, maybe I missed it or something, but I usually never have a problem tagging along with an audiobook. I'm usually like pretty on top of it, but I found myself getting so confused so many times while listening to this book. It was so meh. That's all I have to say about it. Okay, next book that I finished, this one carried over to June, finished it yesterday night, so not last night, yesterday night. But it's Nightbane by Alex Astor. This is the second book to Lightlark, and I can't say much about this book because I don't want to spoil book 1. The first book, Lightlark, is about this event called the Centennial, which is held on the island of Lightlark every 100 years. And Lightlark only appears to outsiders for the Centennial. Other than that, no one could enter Lightlark except for, you know, the people already living on Lightlark. So during the Centennial, all the rulers of the realms have to go to Lightlark to try to break the curses that have been placed upon them, and the curses correspond with each of the realm's powers. And so the curses affect all of them differently. Like Skylings, a big part of their powers is that they fly, and now they can't fly anymore. For the Nightshades, they can't go out at night. For the Sunlings, they can't go out during the day. So the curses really just flipped their world upside down. But when the curses were placed on them 500-ish years ago, I think there was a prophecy that in order to break the curses, they like must work together and one of the rulers must die. But here's the catch. The rulers' lives are tied to their entire realm's lives. So when a ruler dies, so does their entire realm. So that's why over the past 500 years, when the centennial has been held, they have never declared a winner of the centennial, because if they do, then an entire realm must die, and that's like thousands and thousands of people. So Lightlark follows the main character, Isla, who is the ruler of the wildlings, and she has her own predicament where, one, she's actually a really young ruler compared to everyone else, and two, she does not have powers. And because she doesn't, she's very distant from her subjects. No one knows about her except for her and her two guardians, who like kind of train her and teach her everything that she knows. And obviously she can't reveal this to anyone during the centennial, because if they do, then she will be an easy target for them to just say, okay, like, we're just gonna kill Isla, we're gonna break all of our curses, and who cares if the wildlings die? It's not like she can fight back, and we need to prioritize our own realms. And so she goes into the centennial incredibly vulnerable, and there we meet Grimm, and who is the ruler of the Nightshades, and he's like the greatest warrior and one of the greatest rulers, one of the strongest, and also Aro, who is the king of Lightlark, and because he's king of Lightlark, he has powers of not only Sunlings, which is his personal realm, but he also has the powers of a few other realms as well. And I know that description that I just gave was more information than the blurb for Lightlark, but I think if I had known that before reading Lightlark, I would have been looking forward to reading it so much more, because I think it makes it sound a lot more interesting to know that, like, oh, this ruler, she doesn't have powers and she's supposed to. And also that if one of them dies, like, everyone else will die. It just makes the stakes so much higher. Okay, location change, because one, my neighbor's gardener ended up coming in, so you can hear the lawnmower outside. And also, I just realized that my battery was dying and it was dead, and the only other battery I have is also dying. So let's hope this lasts, because this is the last book I have to talk about. This book, I actually really loved Nightbane. I think I gave Lightlark 3.5 stars. This is like solid like 4.5. I think I actually rated it 4.25. I had a little bit of thoughts about it, but if you thought that the enemies to lovers aspect of Lightlark was lackluster, this book, it will make up for it. Like, the real enemies to lovers was not in Lightlark. The real enemies to lovers was in Nightbane, okay? And it's like good enemies to lovers, and you get to see more of Isla's past. There is so much tension in this book, and Lightlark and Nightbane are definitely more romance heavy fantasy books, unlike Emily Wild's Encyclopedia of Fairies, which is a fantasy with a romance subplot. This is like a romance book in a fantasy world. I think that the pacing and the writing in this book is better than what was on Lightlark, so there were definitely some improvement there. There were still a couple lines in Isla's monologue, like her inner thoughts, that I thought were questionable, but like the romance and like the dialogue is so good. Like, sure, it might be cliche, this is a tropey book, but I don't care. I loved it. I had fun reading it. Like, some of the things that Isla was thinking about was just really repetitive and redundant, but I like easily looked past it because I was here for the romance. If you are rooting for one person over the other and you are not happy with how this book starts out or how Lightlark ended, just keep reading. Just keep reading, please. But Graham, he is just There's like a tending to wound scene. I can't tell you all the tropes because I don't want to spoil anything. There's a tending to wound scene. There's a scene where she shows up at the enemy's place and she's like, I didn't know where else to go, and she's injured and he has to tend to her wounds. I know that a lot of people talk about that trope. I've never actually read that trope, at least not that I could remember, but oh yeah, that trope hits. And I think part of the reason why I like Grimm more than I like Aro is because Isla and Grimm's relationship is better developed in my opinion. Whereas with Aro, that was one of my main issues with Lightlark. I thought that the romance between her and Aro just kind of came out of nowhere. Whereas with Grimm, it's been building up. And I think that's part of the reason why I like Isla and Grimm so much. Not to mention the fact that he would literally burn the entire world down for her. Like, just for her. He would wage war for her. And all I'm saying is, Grimm better be endgame. I think that in a love triangle, there is a right and a wrong answer. And Grimm is the correct answer. And Aro is the wrong one. And I stand by that. I do have to say though, Alex loves plot twists in the end of her books because I was not expecting the plot twist that was happening in the end of this book. And the first book, that plot twist at the end was also crazy. But like with the way this book ended, I need Skyshade now. But I only need it if Grimm and Isla are endgame. Finally, this is a book I started, but I'm still in the middle of reading. It is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. And oh my god, it's like Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies all over again. I got to like, I was listening to this book because I was like, you know, it seems interesting enough. I don't know if I want to spend the money on it, and I don't know if I actually want to read the book. So I started listening to it, and then I was like, oh, this is actually really good. I kind of really want to read it, but I don't know. I'll give the audiobook some more time. The more I listened to the audiobook, the more I was like, nope, I need to read it. And then finally when I hit the 25% mark on the audiobook, I was like, no, absolutely not. I was listening to it at work, so I was like, as soon as I get off work, I'm going to Barnes & Noble's and I'm going to try to find this book because I need to have it. I need to read it. I want to annotate it. I just need to absorb it better. Then I found out that Target doesn't have it, Barnes & Noble doesn't have it, so I had to wait 2 full days for Amazon to ship it. I know, right? 2 full days. So long. But yeah, I'm actually gonna start reading it today because I was still in the middle of Nightbane and I just wanted to finish Nightbane before I actually started reading this book, and I'm very, very excited. It has a really similar quality to it as Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. The way it's written is still like very magical. It's, I don't know, just something about it reminds me of Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. They're both academia, they're both rivals to lovers, but it's the writing. The writing has the same quality to it. I'm not saying quality as in it's like how good it is. I'm saying quality as in it just has like a touch in there that's very similar to each other. And I really loved it. I'm really excited to continue reading this. But yeah, those are all of the books that I read in the spring, and I'll see you guys in my next video. And hopefully I'll be reading a few more books over the summer. Bye!